Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is Discerning What is True. Tonight, I'm going to be reading again from a particular book, Psychology and Kabbalah. This particular book I'm reading is, this will be chapter 20. The chapter will be simply entitled Society. So we'll get into this reading right now, in fact. So thank you for being here. The day is Sunday, it's the ninth day. Yes, the ninth day of November 2025. In chapter 20, Society. In the first phase, I should say, of infancy, the psyche lower great triad, composed of the acting, thinking, and feeling subtriads, creates the mechanical level of the mind, which gives the child establishment and stabilizes the ego. If some flaw is incurred in the early process of development, like maternal deprivation or lack of instruction, then there is a distortion in the psyche's patterns. In other words, it's important you have good parents. Seriously. This means that the paths between the separa and the triads will malfunction and seek to compensate their imbalance, leading to psychological disorders in later life. It's good to have parents, good parents, really is. It creates stability in people's lives. I'm very fortunate in my own life. Like maternal deprived, okay, sorry. So the viability of the Jasada ego is vital for it prevents the outer world from excessively intruding into the psyche and swamping it, and protects others, for example, from the impulsive and irrational aspects rising up from within the person. These checks are part of a complex system in the ego, which will be spoken of in detail later, that defend it from either external or internal threats when the child encounters the larger world outside the home. The first experience of extension beyond its mother was for the child to relate to its father. Here, the child has to learn to differentiate between the two and to deal with feelings of love and hate as the taboos that control close relationships are imposed by family life. Crises of desire and jealousy are usually contained and absorbed into the unconscious levels of the psyche as Yasat learns to conform. Gradually, limits are set by daily routines and periods of trial and error, which show what can and cannot be done. All this training, however, is more than just experimentation and the establishment of social order. It is also the exercise of free will, which is present from the day of birth. Even though it may not be articulate, for example, a child soon learns to choose this or that and is perfectly capable of playing one parent off against the other, revealing a very subtle comprehension of psychology and sometimes mastery of a situation. As one woman observed in adulthood, quote, I could manipulate my parents because I was more intelligent than they, end quote. In contrast, some parents recognizing this factor deliberately seek to break the child's will. This does not eliminate free choice for the child, often merely chooses to retreat and appear to be obedient. In most cases, that is, a balance of draw or severity and hesed or mercy by the parents builds up as a set of rules that can stop a child from tormenting a cat or encouraging a talent for painting, as well as give it as some of a support, as its parents' views are interjected. This means that both the individual and cultural values present are taken into the psyche and absorbed by the upper side triads of emotional complexes and concepts according to their left or right pillar orientation. As such, they eventually form what some psychologists call the ego idea and the superego. The former is focused around Isat on the dynamic column, and the latter around Jabra on the structure side. As these associations develop, so all subsequently experiences refer to them. Later, these become crucial factors in individual and collective unconsciousness. The ego idea is a formation composed of all the ideas and emotions associated with concepts such as freedom or helping others and being the good guy, according to criteria of the parent's world. The superego is more concerned with maintaining standards, restraining impulses, and avoiding anything that might upset the family and the society to which it belongs. These Hasidic and Javari elements in the psyche become a social conscious for the child. Individual consciousness is another matter. This requires a high degree of self-consciousness, which is the quality of the soul. As this point is developed, the soul defined on the tree as a Hesed and Temporal and Gerard triad is dormant for the most part because the psyche is too preoccupied with processing experiences. However, from time to time, there are moments in which real moral issues come to the fore in a child as against matters of social customs. One man recalled how, as a boy, he stopped killing frogs for amusement because something very deep within said, "This is wrong." End quote. It's quite a different inner voice from that which echoes his parents' approval or disapproval. You see, in other words, this is something that took place within the child itself and realized by killing frogs, this is not the right thing to do. Okay, so this means something that his higher part of who he is speaks to him within, not something from outside. This is very critical, like I said. Such moments of true consciousness originates from temporal, the sephira of the self, in contrast to the reactions of the superego idea complexes that makes us heed authority. You see, most people, a lot of times people do what is right and wrong because of society's pressure or through other outside pressure in a way to form that child's particular personality in some ways. But in reality, the child can be just simply inwardly, it's just, okay, I'm not going to fight this battle, but I'll fight this other battle over here. And in other words, simply, they're not really, basically, they're just doing it because simply it's outward pressure. On the positive side, black is beautiful is a useful ego idea within limits as a collective inspiration. Britons never, never, never shall be slaves, end quote. Conversely, the superego of Muslims and Jews will always resist eating pork, even though they may not have been brought up in an Orthodox family, and American superegos have a similar reaction when the institution of free speech is threatened. All these collective notions and much more are absorbed by the child as it learns about its society. Besides beginning to absorb the cultural values of his world, the child now starts to relate to others. First of all, brothers and sisters present the ego with problems. For example, another baby in the family is a direct threat to any narcissistic yesod, for suddenly it has to compete or love as the parent gives special attention to the new arrival. Here, the powerful animal and vegetable drives of the body, nefesh, or nefesh, I should say, N-E-F-E-S-H, called the ID by Freud, rises up and disrupts the routine rhythm established in the lower face of the psyche tree. The dot and yesod basis of the ego can be thrown into disarray on such occasions if the psyche is not inherently balanced. However, while jealousy dogs have been known to savage newborn babies, young children having a primitive superego and fearing their parents' anger if they throw the baby out of the window, often find a substitute for their theory by batting or a doll, in other words, or some cases regress to an earlier state of development in order to get the same attention as the younger children is doing. Here we have the start of suppression, one of several defense mechanisms in the ego that deal with unacceptable situations by forcing them out of the ego's consciousness. However, unpleasant and violent thoughts and feelings must go somewhere, and so they will be passed through the elliptic line between hot and nasad, and into the upper side triads of the unconscious. These will attract and extract their various elements of the experience into related associations of thoughts and emotions that will make up the left side of the individual unconsciousness. As such, they may influence the rest of the life in attitudes based upon perhaps a crucial incident in childhood that makes them fear and hate all rivals. The converse is true if the problem of siblings is resolved by goodwill and love. So this is talking about the issue of England here, and he's drawn a map here, so to speak, of it in this book. And then what he goes into is he's going to talk about the situation, what we call culture, which is figure 25. Everyone takes on their local customs and attitudes as a child. These may appear to be disregarded by moving elsewhere, but when it comes to sport, that is Scottish, Welsh, or English, tribalism remains. These conditions apply to towns and geographic areas as well as social classes. In England, it is based upon centuries of history, which feeds into the collective consciousness of the individual in that particular community. All Londoners, like New Yorkers, regard, for example, anything beyond the metropolitan border as of no great significance. Like I said, this was from an 18th century map. Such early encounters with family and later friends and schoolfellows will build up a massive host of negative and positive association in the side triads. The problems of having to accommodate others, finding oneself in an inferior or superior position, defend possessions, share, and cooperate must be profound trauma to a eusodic ego that is insecure. Most children get through this crisis and begin to develop as awareness of a new dimension. After the initiative period in which each child attempts to impose its image of the world centered by itself upon others, it has to adjust or be left out of all the exciting things, you see, that can be done together. In other words, if they don't compromise here, they're going to be a lonely person in some ways here. This requires a major shift in the psyche in which all the egocentric associations are overlaid or made to conform to the local social order, which is based upon the model of the family and society in which they live. However, the drives of the ID nefesh and the superego ID break out from time to time. For example, in the games that are played, imitations of father and mother are acted out with little subtleties, especially when a doll or a young child acting as an infant does something naughty. The combined power of the superego and idea chastises the evildoer as the ego checking system as yet not developed enough to restrain the violence which can erupt when feelings of hostility unconsciously held about some rival can be projected into play. Here we must remember, though, in order to keep the wider and deeper picture, that not all that is observed going on between brothers and sisters is just local or psychological. People are not born into families at random. I'll say that again, folks. It's very clear. This is very true. People are not born into families at random. People in your family are there for a purpose. Everyone is there to learn something. Parents, mom and dad, husband, wife, sister, brother, that type of thing. It's not random, folks. These people are there for a purpose. There's the factor of karma that gives rise to particular relationships that have to be resolved, or lessons that one person may act out for another. Thus, a brother and sister's feelings for each other of love, hate, or even indifference are not just the result of family conditions. They may have something to work out, not only with each other, but with their parents. The problem of favoritism or incest are not just those of sexuality, but also of fatal origins. The loves and hates within a family are the most intense, and these are often seen very clearly in a childhood where the migration mask of the persona hides them. At this point, what is called the shadow of the psyche emerges as socially or personally unacceptable impulses of the body and psyche. These are bridled or hidden by the ego, which is reinforced by the strict rules of the game that are learned by children at the Hodum stage of development. This stringency comes down from the superego of Jara and into the Had as the child imitates the form of the society about it and strives to be as close to the ego idea of Hassad as possible in order to get approval and benefits from their peers. So people compromise, you see. Children compromise because they're longing for certain things, you see. This need to be loved and later respected is also projected upon elder relatives, that is, as the process of interjection and transference moves away from parents and onto other authority figures like teachers at school. Such a process gives the individual a sense of independence from parents while still needing their support as they explore the larger world. Seeing Kabbalastically, the psyche is extended its range into Syria and penetrates the greater dimensions of Yazara as it encounters society beyond the family. The introduction of the child into school widens the horizon even further. Here, the collective experience of the society is reinforced by the way things are done and by what is considered important. Thus, an Egyptian child learns about the Quran, while the Spanish child is taught the rudiments of Roman Catholicism. Some schools emphasize a science curriculum, others politics, and some others, though, good manners will be at least at the heart of the teaching, while somewhere else teaching the teaching the arts of war. Wherever it is, that child will take on whatever it can learn because it needs to become a accepted member of that community. Rebellion at this stage, as a result of physical or psychological disturbance or some fatal pattern, is usually contained because the child cannot support itself, even though it can be disrupted to those who have it in their care. Fate, working through our environment and temperament, holds us to our course during this period, which is why it is sometimes said that, quote, heaven protects the children, end quote. Providence puts a great deal of thought into a person's life, and nothing happens by accident. Parents, siblings, relatives, and society are all taken into account so that the maximum may be learned even in what, well, for example, appears to be a disaster area. Many people have noted in later years, if I had not gone through that crisis, I would not have grown, end quote. The way that a crisis is dealt with is crucial, and it is here that the factor of free will is critical. In the next chapter, we will examine some of the early major turning points and their relationship to the cosmic rhythms which affect the individual and the collective unconscious. Okay, folks, we're going to stop. This book is simply called Psychology and Kabbalah. The chapter I just read was chapter 20, which is talking about society. So the society is used in a way as it being larger than the child itself has an effect upon the child in a way, putting pressure on that child in some ways, for good or bad. So we're going to end this particular talk tonight. Again, this is from a book called Psychology and Kabbalah. It's chapter 20 called Society. Probably going to try to read the next chapter here will be chapter 21. Okay, so we're going to get back into the screen here so we can make sure we do this right. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Appreciate it because this is knowledge. It's also wisdom, a lot of wisdom in here. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Thank you for listening. Again, my channel is simply Discerning What is True. right back. Take care.